Hey everybody, my name's Myers Corp Cosplay, and today we are going to do a breakdown of my Judge Dredd cosplay. Let's get into it. For those who don't know, my name is Myers Corp Cosplay. I'm a cosplayer in the Southern Ontario area. I've been cosplaying for about 10 years. I've won a few awards, I've guested a few cons, and I'm going to talk about how I built my Judge Dredd cosplay, what went into it, you know, the things that I learned, and a whole lot more. So let's start things off with the most important thing, and this is going to be the same across all of these type of videos. This is not a tutorial video. I'm not going to go through step by step. Over the years, I've learned that I should be recording my entire build. However, I focus way too much on the camera and not making things while I'm making things. So I make a bunch of mistakes when I'm filming. So this is my way of doing this and explaining to you guys how I built my cosplays. If there is something that doesn't make sense, if there's something you want more information of, leave a comment below. I always look at my comments and I will message you and we'll kind of go through some things if you want some more information. So let's first start with why did I pick Judge Dredd? Judge Dredd is a big character in my life. I've always loved the faceless law enforcement look. I thought it was really cool design, you know, the big judge, jury, and executioner of the Megacity police force. I love all different versions of the character over the years, the Stallone version, the Carl Urban version, and the comic book version. And that is why if you look at my cosplay, it's actually all three versions mixed in together. The basic cosplay is based off the comic book, the helmet is based off the Carl Urban movie, and the blaster is actually the Sylvester Stallone movie. So it is a whole mix of them put together, but that's how I kind of do my cosplays. I might go towards one specific one, but if I have free range, I kind of like bringing in all the elements of different versions of a character all together into one. So I want to start this by sending out a shout out to a fellow cosplayer. I've got his name right here. I want to make sure I pronounce it properly. I'm probably going to butcher it. Hendrik Pylrud. I had a lot of trouble with this cosplay. This was probably the most challenging cosplay I've ever done. This is my first 3D printed cosplay. I looked online for someone who had all of the 3D prints, and it was really hard to find one. And I found one that had the giant shoulders and everything. However, when I tried to build it and tried to put it in my printer and tried to, you know, mess around with it, slice it up and stuff, it crashed my system over and over again. And I went on to a Facebook group of Judge Dredd cosplayers and I said, hey, does anyone have a file that can help me with this? And Hendrik reached out to me, he DM'd me, and he said, here's all the files that I used to build my Judge Dredd. Take them, enjoy them. And when I say I would not have been able to do this cosplay without him, I would not have been able to do this without him. He is a lifesaver. So Hendrik, I greatly appreciate you. I will tag him below. I'll tag his Instagram. He can help you if you're trying to build a Judge Dredd cosplay. He is a lifesaver. So let's start off with the less exciting parts that I've 3D printed. We have the toe caps, we have the knee pads, and we have the elbow pads. Those three pieces are one solid piece printed with PLA. These actually turned out to be very much of a pain in the arse, not just from the files, but I was given a second 3D printer from a friend of mine who was getting rid of his, and I had so many complications with it. The knee pads, actually, they were very, very stringy. The PLA didn't really bond to itself, so they are bondoed like crazy on the back to make them nice and solid. But yeah, all of those are all solid pieces with PLA. The buckle on the front, that is also a PLA, just one solid piece. I did have to super glue it to the actual belt itself. The badge that is in the photos, that is from the original set of templates that I had issues with. That is why it looks a little off. I've actually taken Hendrik's and built that one, and that is now the new badge that is going to go on my chest. However, I already built that before I had all the issues, so I said, screw it, let's just keep that one. And that was, those, again, all very simple pieces. I threw them in the 3D printer, printed them, again, PLA, any color, because they're going to be painted. If you can get the green for the combat colors for the knee pads and toe pads, that's great. But other than that, I just use any color. The gun. The gun is something I learned a lot with. So because this was my first 3D print, I really didn't understand what infill was. And for those who don't know about 3D printing, infill is the amount of filament that is inside the piece. So so when it prints, you print the walls, the top and the bottom, but you also need something on the inside for structure, because otherwise you're just going to crush it and it'll break. So my printer was originally set for 75% infill, which is a ton of infill. It is way more than necessary for a cosplay piece. The gun is actually 4 pieces put together. So if you look at it sideways, it is cut in a cross shape. The front bottom is the 75% piece. And then after I realized how long it took to print and how much filament I was using, I went, I'm going to do less for the rest of it, which was smart, but also dumb, because when I hold the gun, it is very front heavy and it is very weighted on my wrist. So I would probably redo that gun and make it all 20%, so it's a little more balanced. But yeah, that is something you should know when you're starting your 3D printing, is make sure you know how much infill to use when you're doing most cosplay things. 10 to 20% is about what I have been using for most of my things, and it works out just fine. For the helmet, again, this is the Carl Urban version. This is from another set of patterns that I just wanted to get the helmet from because I really like that look. Again, it is printed in 2 separate pieces. It is split right here. So there's the front half and the back half. That is super glued around the inside, and then on the back it is bondoed very, 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 very heavily around the inside to give it nice structure. I did have it cracked though. So what I also learned when doing this cosplay is epoxy. So epoxy is 2 chemicals mixed together. You dump it in, you let it rest, and it becomes a solid. So what a good cosplaying friend of mine, Reed Props Plus, taught me was, if you have a helmet like this that is in 2 pieces, lay the inside of it with a layer of epoxy, and that will give it extra structure and make sure it's nice and secure and it doesn't break. It has worked flawlessly. So get some epoxy. It's really easy. Like I said, it's just 2 equal parts together, mix it around, just kind of layer it. You don't have to goop it in the bottom, otherwise it's going to be very heavy. Just run it around so there's a coating on it, and then you can dump the rest. And last but not least, for the 3D print, the shoulder pieces, the big giant one on one side and the eagle on the other. These were so much fun to make. There are very few pieces of cosplay that I love just the detail of it, and that was one of them. That big eagle on the side was a blast to sand and bondo. That one, however, did have another issue. It had a problem with the beak. The beak did not print properly, so that is a whole bunch of bondo together to make that beak. But yep, just 3D printed that, and it is, I believe it's at 100%. I could have went up to 120 to make it a little more cartoonish, but 100% was enough. Anything more would get a little heavy. The fabric used on the cosplay. So we have the pouches, we have the wrists, and we have the boot covers. These are all basically foam wrapped in fabric. The pouch templates are from a great buddy of mine, Freakish Workshop. You can get his pouches on his Etsy page. I use those pouches for everything because I'm a 90s comic book fan. They're very simple to put together. I also 3D printed a little buckle on the front. It's just a little circle. It's actually really easy. The wrist gauntlets, same thing. It is just a wrist gauntlet pattern wrapped in fabric with 2 pouches on the top. And the boot covers, the same thing. The only thing that is added to the boot covers is the gun holster, which I just used foam board and just cut out a rectangle the size of the gun so the gun would fit in nice and clean. All right, last but not least, let's talk about the stuff that we purchased, because any cosplay, you can purchase some things. Like, it's perfectly fine. Even though some people might look at this and say, you competed in a competition, then none of this should be purchased. Guess what? Some of it was purchased because I don't know how to sew, and I did modify the things that I purchased. So give me a bit of a break. The boots were purchased because I'm not building brand new boots. The chain that came from the zipper, which I forgot to say, 3D printed the zipper. From the zipper to the badge, it was a purchase chain. I weathered it. I colored it. That's what purchased. Gloves were just off Temu. They were green military gloves. And last but not least, the coveralls. These coveralls I have had since I was a teenager. These were coveralls that were my old Michael Myers ones when I used to cosplay as Michael Myers. I did have to thin them out, so most coveralls, if you've ever worn coveralls, are bulky because they're supposed to cover all. All I did was I grabbed each side and squeezed it in and tucked it in on itself and pinched it. And pinned it so that held the sides so they were nice and slim fitting. Flipped them inside out and just did a temporary stitch on either side to hold them in. It's actually one of the first times I've ever used a sewing machine. So now the most important part, how did I get all these 3D pieces attached to my body? This is something that worked well, but over the next few months I'm probably going to modify and make it a little better. So the way I attached these were with marine snaps or marine screws, one of the two. What those are is they are the same type of snaps that like clothing has, but the part that goes in actually has a screw on the other side. So what the pattern comes with has some spots that are flat and you will screw into. That's where you'll screw the screw side of the snap. The way you're going to do that is you're going to put the end on your screwdriver and you're going to get a lighter or something hot and you're going to heat up the screw so when you screw it in, it melts the plastic. If you just screw into the plastic, there's a good chance it is going to crack and it could damage the piece. You could check out how I made my Ghost Rider gauntlets. The spikes for that. There's a video on my YouTube channel for the spikes. That is the same technique that I used for the shoulder pieces, the knees, and all that. So once you put the screws in, you're going to get some nail polish or something that is going to be wet and tacky and still leave them print. Wipe it onto each of the screws and then lay it on there and touch where those points are going to be. That will show you where to put the snaps. This worked out flawlessly. Just doing it that way worked great. The problem, however, is that this technique does not leave a lot of room for your clothing to stretch. So the problem we ran into is that when you put, say, the eagle shoulder on, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points on it, and that is pulling your shirt in 6 different directions, kind of. 2 different directions, but at 6 different points. It doesn't, your clothing, because it's so tight, even a shirt like this, doesn't have a ton of stretch to it when you're trying to stretch it all over the place and hold it at that spot for a long time with just a snap. So I did need help snapping those on. I have a good friend, Pretty Nerdy Crystal, who actually came to my hotel room and helped me into the cosplay for my cosplay contest and for the Saturday of Fan Expo. She lost a nail putting the pieces on. I severely apologized over and over again about it, but that was the issue, getting it on. So the only thing I would probably do now is I might attach a piece of Velcro to the front of the shoulder piece just to hold it in properly. I'd probably do the same with the knee pads. Not stitch onto here, but sort of have it just hanging just as like a last ditch effort. If everything was to snap, we still have this to hold on. And I think that's kind of it. That is the overall how I built the cosplay. Everything was like, most of it was 3D printed. For any of the 3D printed parts, it's regular technique if you're ever using 3D printed. Sand it. You can get some Bondo with some nail polish remover or some acetone that will thin out the Bondo, and you can wipe it on there. It'll get in all the cracks. Sandable primer, same thing. Sand it as smooth as you can in all of the details, all of the little crevices. Smooth it out with sandpaper. You can use, I was using 80 grit, 120 grit, 240 grit, up to 360 grit. You can get super, super detailed, but because I knew this piece would be weathered and have some, shadowing and some dirty in essence to it. I didn't want to make it too clean because there's no point. It's just going to get dirty. But overall, that is the cosplay, and I had a lot of fun wearing it. I'm probably going to wear it again at some point. I do want to do a good photo shoot with it. The shots that I have now are just from my home. But yeah, if you have any questions about how I build it or any details, or you want any behind the scenes photos, I got a ton of photos that I've taken throughout building. Leave a comment, DM me, whatever. I'm always willing to talk about cosplay and all of the things that I've done with putting this cosplay together, because I know Dredd is a really fun costume to wear. If you like it, hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and all that stuff. I'm going to do a whole bunch more of these for my other cosplays. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks. Talk to you soon.